Ladies and gentlemen, welcome for 7th launch of the year from the Guiana Space Center, the 4th with Ariane 5 in 2050. Tonight, Ariane 5 is set to deliver into an optimal geostationary transfer orbit two telco satellites, Eutelsat 8 West B for Eutelsat and Intelsat 34 for Intelsat. Ariane 5 will be required a performance slightly below 10 tons. It will have a window of 1 hour and 46 minutes to lift off, opening precisely at 8:10 p.m. Universal Time. The mission will last 42 minutes approximately. I would like to thank Eutelsat for entrusting Arianespace with the launch of 30 of its satellites. Once on location, Eutelsat 8 West B, manufactured by Thales Arianespace in its Cannes facility, will primarily strengthen Eutelsat's direct broadcasting services above North Africa and the Middle East, and thus comfort its leadership above this region. I am also grateful to Intelsat for its decision to select Arianespace for the launch of Intelsat 34, the 55th Intelsat satellite to be orbited by our launch vehicle family. Manufactured by Space Systems Loral in Palo Alto, Intelsat 34 will provide direct-to-home television services above Latin America, as well as broadband access to aeronautical and maritime customers requiring connectivity in the North Atlantic Ocean. Tonight, Arianespace is particularly proud to be in charge of a launch mission for the two first Ariane 5 commercial customers, also belonging to the top 3 private operators acting in the field of satellite communications. But our 81st Ariane 5 is now being readied for liftoff, so enjoy the show.
Greetings, everybody, wherever you may be, and welcome once again to Kourou, the home of the Ariane family, for today's live broadcast of Ariane space flight number 225, an international launch for two old friends tonight with Eutelsat and Intelsat. Joshua Jampol here, coming to you live, as usual, from the Jupiter Mission Control Center here at the Guiana Space Base. We will be bringing you all the action in this 7th launch of the year for Arianespace, so we hope you will stay with us. All is green for the moment. Another international mission tonight. As Ariane 5 waits patiently on the pad for her moment in the sun, we can take a close look at her. She stands 54 meters tall, weighs about 775 tons, and is in two parts, a lower composite and an upper one. The lower composite includes the main core stage and the two boosters, so 3 power sources. The boosters, you can see standing on either side, are 31 meters tall. The upper component includes the single upper stage engine, also the vehicle equipment bay where the computers are, and the fairing inside, which are the 2 satellites. We'll describe each of these stages in detail while they're functioning, so you can follow Ariane as she makes her way across the Atlantic, and we'll have more on the 2 satellites as well. The launch window tonight, 1 hour 45, so plenty of time. Launch time will be 17:10 local, 16:10 on the U.S. East, and 22:10 Paris. Some of the key players who make the mission happen: this is the Arianespace High Command, the Flight Directorate. Stéphane Israël you saw. With him, Louis Laurent, who's the Senior VP for Programs. Edward Perez, the top technical officer for Ariane and the living technical memory of all flights. And rounding out the team, Patrick Loire, who heads up Arianespace Kourou facilities here. These are the top 4. In our first film tonight, a look at our upper passenger, Eutelsat 8 West B. We'll be hearing first from Arianespace's Beatrice Romero.
Flight 225
of the Ariane launch vehicle will carry on the upper position Eutelsat 8 West B, which will be the 30th satellite launched by Arianespace for the telecommunications operator Eutelsat.
I'm pleased to make this video today because I know that when you will be watching it, we will be at the end of almost 3 years of efforts by the teams of Eutelsat, Thales Alenia Space, Arianespace and French Guiana, who have been involved in the design, construction, test and preparation of EAWB for launch. EAWB is one of the more sophisticated television satellites ever built for Eutelsat. It will reinforce Eutelsat in-orbit resources at 7-8 degrees west, which is one of the most dynamic in the global satellite TV market, with more than 52 million homes in North Africa and in the Middle East.
We would like to thank Eutelsat for the confidence and loyalty, and we will see you soon for the next launch campaign.
7th launch of the year tonight, as Stéphane Israël said, and the 7th in 7 months for Arianespace. It's also the 4th of the year for the Ariane 5, with plenty more coming up in the second half of the year, which promises to be just as busy. Start of the countdown here in Jupiter began this morning. The building was activated at 7. Checks on the range and the pad began 7:45. Everything was cleared during a dress rehearsal on August 14th. We're going to go over to Marie-Laure Chaufour of Arianespace now for a look at our second passenger, Intelsat 34.
Arianespace is very proud to be once again involved in the deployment of a new satellite for Intelsat and to contribute to the expansion of this major operator.
It's great to be back here in Kourou for another launch campaign. This is my 6th campaign here in the last 7 years, and I can say without a doubt, this has been the smoothest of all these campaigns. And for that, I would like to thank SSL MBA, Arianespace, CSG, and our friends at Freelance for making our stay here in Kourou a pleasant one.
Intelsat 34 will be respectively the 55th Intelsat satellite and 51st SSL satellite to be launched with an Ariane vehicle.
We are approaching a key moment in the launch countdown. It's the synchronized sequence, or the automatic sequence. You'll hear the voice of the range operations manager call out the milestone. It's this man here, Antoine Guillaume. The range operations manager, also called the DDO.
À tous de DDO, arrêt du décompte suite à un rouge ensemble de lancement. Que tous les moyens restent prêts pour la reprise de la chronologie de H0-7 minutes, des retours au vert.
All right, you heard Antoine de Guillaume say we have a hold in the countdown. You can see it's red on the 7-minute mark. And I don't know, when you have a shot of Jupiter, you can see in the very back on the green status panels in the back of the hall, you see it's also red there. And the next time the camera comes up, we'll mention that. But normally, when things are green, we proceed through to the synchronized sequence. We are holding on the synchronized sequence now. Antoine Guillaume said we have a red on the ensemble de lancement. You can see it there, ensemble de lancement, which means the entire overall base. So no idea what the problem might be, but we are holding. The green status panels there are a green, red, no, and go resume of everything it takes to launch. And when things are green, we go. Whenever there's a red, we stop, which is the case now. So the DDO also said to be ready to restart the countdown soon. So they're holding. What happens when they're holding, it's quite a normal situation. It gives us time to sort out any problems. It's like a stop sign in your car. What's happening now is all the teams are looking at the parameters, looking at why there is a hold, analyzing them. And while this is going on, the launcher goes into a safe configuration so it'll be ready to go once the problem has been solved. And once the problem is solved, we will start the countdown. Again, the launch operations director now checking with his assistants, making sure the computers have putting the launcher into safe configuration while we're holding. The teams are preparing a solution or an alternative to deal with the problem. And people on the phones around here talking to their teams, deciding what exactly to do. If you just joined us, we started off and we came down to the 7-minute mark. And we have a hold in the countdown on tonight's launch, Eutelsat 8 West B, Intelsat 34. We mentioned the red is like a stop sign. So what we're doing now is stopping and thinking. People begin to examine the unexpected parameter. As we said before, we don't know what the unexpected parameter might be. It could be anything. It's useless to speculate. And for later on, people are beginning to examine how to move back into the launch window. Remember, we said the launch window is 1 hour and 45 minutes. That's plenty of time. So I think what we're going to do is cut away, and we'll be back with you once we have solved the problem. Don't go away.
À tous de DDO, au retour au vers des moyens ELA, attention pour la reprise de la chronologie.
The DDO, as you heard, has said we can resume the countdown.
Début de la séquence finale lanceur. Le nouvel âge zéro visé est 20h34 et 1 minute. Et 1 seconde.
Okay, so
Je répète, le nouvel âge zéro visé est 20h34 et 1 seconde.
Okay, well, the DDO has set us going again. You can see the clock is ticking. And we're going to show you how Ariane 5 was put together in her launch campaign. Back with more in a moment. Some parts of Ariane 5 come to French Guiana by ship from Europe. They then travel by road to the space base where their assembly begins in the launcher integration building. The lower stage is erected vertically, and the 2 solid boosters are transported to this building and positioned on either side. Then the upper stage is integrated onto the lower stage. At this point, Ariane is moved to the final assembly building. The satellites also follow a preparation campaign. It's carried out in parallel with assembly of the launch vehicle in facilities dedicated to satellite operations. Special teams work in clean rooms, weighing and testing everything from electric cables to solar panels. With these tests completed, the satellites are then filled with fuel. The satellites, in their turn, then move to the final assembly building for what's called combined operations and are mated atop the launcher. Intelsat 34 was put in place first in the lower position, then Eutelsat 8 West B was enclosed, fairing which was hoisted atop the launcher. In all, a campaign takes 6 weeks to ready both launcher and satellites. During the campaign, Arianespace and customer teams meet daily to monitor all activities. At a final launch readiness review on August 18th, these teams gave the green light for the launcher to be rolled out to her position on the pad. Fixed to the launch table, here Ariane 5 awaits the final countdown and the start of her mission. Gives you an idea of some of the complex procedures that must be carried out for each launch here. Each campaign is different because the passengers change, but generally the campaign follows the same procedures. Look at the green status panels on the right there. The space base here covers a lot of ground, 750 square kilometers, and a lot goes on, but all the activities can be summed up by these status panels. What they are is a go, no-go, green, red resume of everything it takes to successfully prepare, launch, and follow Ariane Green means okay, red means the opposite. It's very simple. If we get a red in any of these areas, we stop the countdown. As you saw just moments ago, whatever held us up is holding us up no longer, and you can see we're just under 4 minutes from liftoff. The panels are there. We checked them during the first part of the mission before lifting off. The status of these services, and you saw them there, the launcher, the satellites, the weather, telemetry, everything, are sent in here to Jupiter from the different outposts, which is why we call Jupiter the nerve center of the space base. But other people are working tonight, among them up here, the launch management teams under the direction of Patrick Lucet, you heard talking about the launcher campaign. This is the Launch Control Center, and 3 main teams are working. One is responsible for launch operations, a second for flight readiness of the launcher, and a third follows the countdown from a quality point of view, according to established procedures. In all, about 100 people up there. They're closer to the pad than we are here in Jupiter. We're about 13, 14 kilometers away, but they're right next door. They're 1 kilometer away. The control center, you see them sitting in, has walls that are 1 meter thick. They carry out all the checks and validations down to liftoff that will let the mission begin. Once the launchers left the pad, their work is done. Some other things that we have to take into account when launching: a French Space Operations Act passed in 2008 makes it mandatory to show that you're preventing any collision, possible collision, with the International Space Station. Remember, the ISS, flying roughly 400 kilometers above us, makes a pass around the Earth every 90 minutes or so. So sometimes if the ISS is in Ariane's projected flight path, we change the launch window, but that's not the case tonight. This version of Ariane, mainly for commercial launches going east into what they call eventually geostationary transfer orbit. Take a look at the split screen image now. This is one of the last things you're going to see. We just want to mention it briefly. These are the propellant feeder arms, liquid hydrogen on the left, liquid oxygen on the right. We monitor these arms down to the last minute because we're filling the upper stage with very cold cryogenic fuel, and it boils off in the weather here. You see the yellow bars in the middle of your screen. Those are the arms. And keep your eyes on them at liftoff because they have to swing back. They have to pull back in order to start the ignition sequence going. If they don't pull back, we don't go anywhere. 1.5 minutes to go until the mission begins. We want to say hello to our friends at Eutelsat and our friends in the Mideast where they're watching. At Intelsat headquarters, just outside Washington, all of you taking the broadcast, we hope you're enjoying the evening.
Attention pour moins 1 minute.
The DDO is going to call out the 1 minute mark, and we'll be into the final 60 seconds.
Top H0 moins 1 minute.
All that's left to explain is the final ignition sequence. It starts when the yellow arms pull back. Remember to watch for that. That gets the ball rolling. And then watch for this. At H0, the DDO will call out allumage volcan. That's the ignition of the main stage, the cryogenic engine. But we don't lift off yet. There will be a 7-second wait while the onboard computer checks the performance of the engine. It does this twice. If all is well, it gives the order to light the 2 solid boosters, and we go. We will let you watch liftoff of Arianespace, flight number 225, Eutelsat 8 West B and Intelsat 34. Final countdown.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage EAP, décollage. Les paramètres bord sont normaux.
So the arms swung back as scheduled. You saw it there. We had ignition, and you saw Ariane 5 begin her mission, rising off the ground here in French Guiana with a lot of fire. right on time at little past the original launch window because we have the hold in the countdown, but we're fine now. The DDO says everything is okay on board with our two passengers, Eutelsat 8 West B and Intelsat 34. We are underway. The boosters providing over 90% of the thrust, propelling the launcher along its trajectory at ever higher velocity, getting her pull to the Earth. And there's a lot to pull. Ariane's weight at liftoff, about 775 tons. Most of that's fuel. She's burning 5 tons of fuel every second, 2.5 tons in each booster, and the core stage burning another 300 kilos per second. Ariane now following the flight program in the onboard computer, which gives all the commands, including stage separations. We'll soon begin to see those. We are in the first of 4 flight phases. The first 3 are powered. The last is not. We'll describe each in turn so you can follow Ariane as she heads across the Atlantic. Right now, the first flight phase, the Vulcan engine and the 2 boosters are burning. The boosters will burn their propellant in just under 2.5 minutes, about 20 seconds to go, and they'll be the first we jettison. You'll hear the DDO call out that milestone too. We're heading east over the Atlantic. The decision to build the site here in French Guiana made in the 60s when France wanted a new base, in part for its opening on the water to allow for launches over uninhabited areas. On the animation, you saw the separation of the booster, so we've had that right on time. The confirmation by the DDO right on time at about 79 kilometers up. You see what that looks like. The other booster out of camera range on the left. The onboard computer detects that there is no more fuel in the tanks. Nice shot of Ariane rising. The dot of light is the core stage still burning. As they have no more propellant to burn, the thrust decreases and the computer senses the drop in acceleration. Coming up next on separation of the fairing, you see the logos there that's placed there by the customers. That's something of a tradition. We said 79 kilometers altitude, roughly. You can see on the bottom left is our altitude, on the right is our speed. Sometimes the figure is not exactly what you see. I mean, that's normal. That's due to a slight delay or lag in the telemetry coming in here. We've had separation of the fairing right on time. You see Eutelsat exposed to the elements there. Separation of the fairing given by 2 pyrotechnic systems, one horizontal and one vertical. These are cords that actually remove the fairing by a small contained explosion. We emphasize it's controlled, so there's no threat to the vehicle. We can separate the fairing now because we're out of the dense layers of the atmosphere at over 100 kilometers up. You can see what the jettison of the fairing looks like. There's another half on the right side out of camera range. Above 100 kilometers, there's neither friction nor heating, which could disturb the passengers. Liftoff's very noisy, and a noisy affair which shakes the launcher up. We could also discard any dead weight when possible to maximize the launcher's operation. We can do that now. The fairing weighs over 2 tons. We are in the second powered flight phase. The boosters have done their work. Only the single engine burning now. It'll burn for about 9 minutes in all. Our speed is important at this moment, and that's the role of the main stage. Its cryogenic propellant system is not only highly efficient, but provides a push that can last for a long time, like 9 minutes. There are different propulsion systems on the Ariane 5. Cryogenics, as used in the main stage, are more efficient than solid propellant, which is used in the boosters. Basically, solids are for getting us off the ground, away from the pull of the Earth. Cryogenics for more precision orienting of the vehicle, and they can allow for a stage to be reignited in another version of Ariane. We're going to go to a replay of the liftoff that happened just 5 minutes ago, so you can relive those exciting moments. Coming up, Ariane 5 is the heavy lift launcher. The other 2 members of the family, Soyuz, lifts middle-sized payloads, 2 and 3 tons, and Vega, the light lift vehicle, for 1-ton missions. Here's the replay. You can see from another angle It's always exciting to live these moments of liftoff. We have cameras at several of the half-dozen observation sites that are stationed across the base. There's another one. It's a big one. It's a big base, 750 square kilometers, about the size of the island of Martinique, our neighbor, if you know Martinique. And these observation sites furnish us with shots from different angles. People also line the beaches to watch the launch, where the view is also quite good. Here's another angle. The closest observation site is called Toucan, and many of the VIPs are out there now. Toucan is closest to the base, about 4 kilometers. Ariane 5's liftoff there lights up the whole place. I don't know if you've ever seen it from there, but it's really something to watch. We should have more replay shots, including from Toucan, at the end of the broadcast. Some figures. The 2 passengers tonight are the 164th and 165th satellites to be launched on an Ariane 5. They're also the 318th and 319th to go into geostationary transfer orbit. 2 minutes to go, roughly, in the lower stage burn. On the right is Eutelsat, exposed to the elements. Under that, the black bell-shaped structure, that's called the Silda. That's a carrying structure that allows us to lift a second passenger. And underneath the black Silda is our second passenger, Intelsat 34. Underneath that is the vehicle equipment bay, and the long tube is the first stage, whose engine will be cut off in about a minute, and the first stage will be separated shortly after that, and we'll be into the second half of the mission when the second stage is lit. Our radar and telemetry signal has been picked up by our first downrange tracking station. That's over the border in Brazil at a place called Natal. Natal will see the lower stage burnout and separation at 8 minutes and 51 seconds, as well as the upper stage ignition. All of Ariane's trajectory has been designed to be followed from the ground. The launcher is sending radar and telemetry back, and a network of stations keeps constant watch on the health of her systems. Telemetry is launch vehicle data, basically. Information on about 1,500 parameters now being collected and transmitted back to the ground stations every second. These include indicators of Ariane's health and performance, and they come from pressure and temperature sensors, which record all of her functions throughout the flight. There you saw the shut-off of the lower stage engine, and we'll have in a moment, there it is, the separation of the first stage, and there you saw the engine light up on the second stage. 3 commands given by the onboard computer in 12 seconds. The main stage will fall into the Atlantic. You can see that's what's happening above. We'll fall off the coast of Africa. Up in space, all is well aboard Ariane 5. Our speed, as you can see, approaching 7 kilometers per second, and our altitude approaching 200 kilometers. We're now into the third and final powered flight phase. It's a 16-minute burn for the upper stage. We'll burn until 24 minutes and 54 seconds. The upper stage, about the size of a small studio apartment, and its job is to take the satellites to their injection point. It also positions them for separation and then releases them into space. With ignition of the upper stage, the second half of the mission, we'll look more closely at the satellites. Eutelsat's fleet providing 5,800 TV channels that are received in over 270 million homes worldwide. Ariane 5 carrying Eutelsat 8 West B and Intelsat 34, the world's leader in launch operations tonight, lifting satellites for two of the world's leaders in satellite communications. Arianespace orbits telecom satellites, but also satellites with many other missions. Rafi Moussalian, CTO of Eutelsat, retiring after 30 years. Been at Eutelsat since 1985. We mentioned many other missions. The first flights of 2015 show how the Ariane family of launchers is a good fit for all of today's space applications, technology, navigation, telecom, civil and military, private and public operators. The February Vega mission launched the IXV technology demonstrator, the re-entry vehicle for the European Space Agency. In March, a Soyuz sent up 2 more Galileo satellites in the European GPS constellation. Vega in June orbited Sentinel, an Earth observation eye in the sky for ESA. In our next film, also on our first passenger Eutelsat, by its builder, Thales Arianespace.
Je suis ravi de partager avec vous ce moment exceptionnel pour Eutelsat. Le lancement d'un satellite comme Eutelsat 8WB est un événement extrêmement important et chacun d'entre nous, chez Thales Arianespace, est très fier d'y être associé. C'est aussi le 143e lancement d'un satellite Thales Arianespace avec Arianespace. Superbe partenariat qui est amené à durer. Eutelsat est un leader mondial et une entreprise visionnaire. Et nous sommes très honorés d'être à nouveau à vos côtés pour un programme aussi important, et ceci pour la 25e fois. Eutelsat 8WB revêt une importance tout à fait significative pour la flotte d'Eutelsat. Il va non seulement en accroître la couverture, mais aussi servir les marchés très dynamiques de la télévision numérique, de l'Afrique du Nord au Moyen-Orient. Il est équipé des produits innovants et flexibles de la gamme SpaceFlex et fournira des services en bande KU et en bande C. J'aimerais ajouter aussi, non sans une certaine fierté, que nous sommes très contents d'avoir livré Eutelsat 8WB avec plus d'1 mois d'avance, et ceci grâce à l'excellent travail d'équipe entre Eutelsat et Thales Arianespace. C'est cet esprit d'équipe et de confiance mutuelle qui donne le ton de campagne humainement très marquante et émotionnellement très forte, la marque, je crois, de l'esprit qui règne entre nos équipes et les vôtres. Je tiens à remercier très chaleureusement Eutelsat, et en particulier Michel de Rosen, pour leur confiance renouvelée. Merci aussi à toutes les équipes pour leur travail et leur engagement, à celles de Thales Arianespace, d'Eutelsat et d'Arianespace pour cette superbe campagne. Je souhaite à Eutelsat et à ses clients le meilleur pour Eutelsat 8WB.
Arianespace has launched 70 satellites made by Thales Arianespace. The Ariane 5 program began in 1996. Double launches are its specialty. Tonight's no exception, with Eutelsat 8 West B and Intelsat 34. We launched 12 times in 2002, and we're on track for another record year at the Space Base. We're currently preparing 3 launches at once. In early September, a Soyuz will carry 2 more Galileos for that navigation system. Also in September, Ariane Spaceflight 226 will orbit another 2 telecommunication satellites. And Vega's 6th flight in November will orbit the LISA Pathfinder space probe for ESA. In all, after tonight, another 2 Ariane 5s, 2 Soyuz, and 1 Vega. Arianespace and Intelsat, our second passenger, have been partners for 30 years. Their relationship goes back to 1983 with launch of Intelsat 507. Intelsat 34 will replace Intelsat 805 in Galaxy 11. This latter was launched by Arianespace in December 1999, Flight 125. Turning to our second passenger, a film now on Intelsat 34. You'll be hearing from the CEO, Steve Spengler.
Thank you for joining us for the launch of Intelsat 34. There is nothing more exciting than seeing a rocket take flight with one of your satellites. Today's launch of Intelsat 34 is no different. Intelsat 34 will be used by millions of people over its 15-year life. The satellite's mission reflects the breadth and depth of Intelsat's satellite solutions and the services that we deliver to customers. From content distribution for customers such as Fox, HBO, European Broadcasting Union, Globalsat, and Encompass, to an expanded direct-to-home platform for Telefónica Brazil's GVT, Intelsat 34 is a shining addition to our sector-leading Latin America video neighborhoods. It also enhances our global mobility platform, allowing aeronautical and maritime providers, such as Airbus Defence and Space, to expand their throughput over the highly trafficked North Atlantic. Today also marks a milestone with SSL, the launch of our 50th satellite together. Thank you, SSL, for your partnership and dedication. Together, we can be very proud of what we contributed to a connected world. Thanks also to the employees of Arianespace. We rely upon your expertise and look forward to the completion of this mission and our next, the launch of Intelsat 29E. To the Intelsat mission team, we appreciate your hard work on our behalf. Lastly, thank you to our customers for your continued trust and support of Intelsat. Wishing us all the best of luck for a successful mission. Go Intelsat 34.
It was a relatively short program from signing of the contract to launch Intelsat 34 to today, 26 months. Intelsat 34 is the 55th Intelsat to be orbited by Arianespace, and there are 4 more in the order book. Intelsat 29E. Ken Lee of Intelsat said this morning that the campaign for this launch was so smooth that it was boring, which is, of course, what you want. The other Intelsats, 29E, also called Epic 1, 33E, Epic 2, and Intelsat X, which is Epic 4, plus Intelsat 36. Intelsat's first satellite, Intelsat 1, you might remember, was called Early Bird. Launched in 1965, the world's first commercial satellite. It was, anybody remember? 150 kilos. Intelsat 34 tonight weighs 1.7 tons without fuel, 3.3 tons filled. It will operate with Ku and C-band transponders like Eutelsat 8 West B. The Ku band will serve the North Atlantic Ocean for maritime and aeronautical applications. The C-band providing service for the Americas, Western Europe, and Africa. We are being followed by our next tracking station, Libreville in Gabon, on the west coast of Africa. More of the mission in a moment, but for now, another word on Intelsat 34 from Space Systems L'Oréal.
SSL, the world's leading manufacturer of commercial satellites, built Intelsat 34 for Intelsat, the leading provider of satellite services worldwide. Intelsat 34 will meet the growing demand for direct-to-home television and media distribution services in Latin America, and it will provide broadband for maritime and aeronautical companies serving the North Atlantic. The satellite is based on the powerful and highly reliable SSL 1300 platform. With 79 SSL 1300 satellites on orbit today, it is the world's most widely used satellite model. This is a result of its established reputation for quality and its versatility to support a broad range of applications and innovative technology advances. Intelsat 34 uses SSL's flight-proven electric propulsion system, which is actively in use on 17 satellites with more than 40,000 hours of successful on-orbit operation. Intelsat 34 is the 50th satellite that SSL has built for Intelsat and represents a long-standing partnership between the companies. That partnership is built on trust and has lasted more than 30 years, with nearly half the satellites in the Intelsat fleet designed and built by SSL. SSL would like to thank Intelsat for its confidence over the many years, and it also thanks Arianespace, which has worked with SSL on more than 50 launches. With Intelsat 34, the SSL team, together with its partners, once again has demonstrated its commitment to provide a satellite destined for success.
Acquisition of our final tracking station at Malindi, Kenya, due right about now on the east coast of Africa. There we are, picked up by Malindi. Ariane 5 crossing Africa in about 5 minutes. The station will see the upper stage burnout and both satellite separations and the end of the Ariane mission. Arianespace has launched 48 satellites built by SSL and its predecessors, another 13 in the manifest, including Intelsat 36 and Eutelsat 65 West A. Currently, SSL with 79 satellites operating in orbit. Company founded in the San Francisco Bay Area in 1957 as a division of Philco. Maybe some of you remember that, the Americans out there. Philco began launching satellites in 1960. We're coming up on cutoff of the upper stage engine in less than a minute. We will have extinction of the upper stage. The satellites will be separated when the launcher is moving at between 8 and 9 kilometers per second. Why? Well, it's close to the speed at which the Earth turns, 10 kilometers per second. That's also 36,000 kilometers an hour. Once they are released by Ariane, the satellites can get to that speed and to their proper altitude by firing their apogee motors. These motor firing, their early operations, usually occurring in the first few days after separation. We'll be back with more on that. And then once at this speed, they are capable of producing coverage over a specific geographic area because they're in what is called the geostationary orbit. They appear to hover over one region, but they're actually flying at the same speed as the Earth. On the animation, you saw the cutoff of the upper stage.
Extinction de l'ESC sur commande de guidage.
And the DDO has just confirmed it. You see our speed in the lower right, 9.3 kilometers per second. That's about the top speed. Emmanuel Macron, the French economic minister, on hand tonight, and we'll be hearing from him after the mission. By the time Ariane separates Eutelsat 8 West B at 28 minutes and 17 seconds, she'll be moving at just under 9 kilometers per second, about 8.9.
Acquisition de la télémesure lanceur par la station de Malindi au Kenya.
At the Silda separation, remember Silda's the carrying structure for the second passenger, that comes at 30 minutes and 39 seconds. The speed drops again to 8.6 kilometers. And for separation of Intelsat 34, which comes at plus 41 minutes 51 seconds, speed down to 7 kilometers per second. So after hitting our maximum speed, we're now sailing without power. The powered flight phase of the upper stage ended when the onboard computer judged that the targeted orbit had been attained. So we're in the final flight phase, not powered, and we're coasting. What's happening is the upper composite, and you can see it there, being spun up, beginning a series of maneuvers to reach the positions from where it can release the satellites. The upper stage has a dual role, propulsion and ballistic. The propulsion job is over. It's carrying out the second job now. The composite that you see there is all that's left of the original 775 tons. You got 2 satellites, some adapters, the Silda and the vehicle weigh about 10 tons, down from 775. You see our speed on the bottom dropping as our altitude is climbing, all quite normal. We are coasting, but that doesn't mean that nothing's happening. The composite is being maneuvered and spun. It's a series of over a dozen operations, ranging in time from half a second to a few minutes. The attitude and control system uses small thrusters to perform the maneuvers. You can see them popping on and off there. They have quite a job to do in the next 8 minutes or so. What they must do is orient the first satellite, orient the composite, I should say. There's Rafi. That is a spring, an Ariane 5 spring, which he was presented with this morning for his retirement, because he's launched over 25 satellites, I think. So they gave him a spring as a as a memento. He was very moved. What they must do is orient the composite in the direction and altitude that the first satellite requires, then separate it. Then they have to start a second series of maneuvers to orient and separate the Silda in another direction at another altitude. And they have to do the same for the lower passenger. Eutelsat 8 West B due to be separated at about 1,100 kilometers up, coming up. And the Silda at 1,500 kilometers, and Intelsat 34 at 4,200 kilometers.
West B.
And there we've had confirmation, and you can see it on the screen, of separation of our first passenger, Eutelsat 8 West B, right on time. The first good news, you see the people in the hall here pretty much holding their applause very politely until the second passenger goes. The early operation maneuvers, as Ariane is being spun up the Silda, first telemetry acquisition about 21 minutes from now, after separation, by the Kumsan station in South Korea. There will be 3 apogee motor firings between tomorrow and 5 days after launch. Final deployment and final orbit acquisition in about 6 days, and she will be in service beginning of October. While we have a quick minute, the quiz question concerns the builders. All right, listen up, everybody. Eutelsat and Intelsat, though they have flown with Arianespace collectively 85 times, have never flown together before. But the builders have. So the quiz question, number 225. When was the last time Thales Alenia Space and Space Systems Loral flew together on an Ariane mission? Give you a hint, it's not that long ago. See if anybody out there can get this one. When was the last time Thales Alenia Space and SSL shared an Ariane flight? We'll give you the answer in a minute. While you're thinking, the ballistics phase continues. We have had, if you just joined us, successful separation of our first passenger, Eutelsat 8 West B. We're waiting now for the next step, which is separation of the Silda. That's due up in about 10 seconds. That's the black bell-shaped structure, I should say, just above the white part. The white part is the vehicle equipment bay where the computers are. When the Silda is pushed away from the mothership, we will see Intelsat 34. You see that happening.
Du système de lancement double Ariane.
So you see Intelsat facing the elements, awaiting her separation. Another 10 minutes to go for her separation. And when Intelsat 34 is released at 41:51, that will mark the end of the first part of the ballistics phase. Silda separated out over the Indian Ocean, as will Intelsat 34B. We're still in the what they call the space ballet. We're in the pointing up phase required by Intelsat 34 for its separation. Remember the Silda, the carrying structure that allows us to lift a second passenger. We've used the Silda, or an earlier form of it, well over 100 times. Double launches being the Ariane specialty. There are 6 versions of the Silda, varying sizes. This one measures just under 6 meters tall. Separation marks an end as well as a beginning. It's the end of the launch vehicle's mission for the satellite, but also marks the start of the satellite's own life. And the Eutelsat people now getting to work. The satellite, basically a cylinder, the cylinder fixed on an adapter by a clamp, which encircles the cylinder, keeps the satellite in place. Separation is triggered by the clamp, which is cut at one point and becomes loose. This frees the satellite from the adapter and releases 8 springs, and you saw one of them with Rafi down there. These 8 springs push the satellite forward. When the satellite moves away from the composite, this activates 2 switches signaling separation, and this information is transmitted to the ground, and it's this that we get here in Jupiter. The ground stations, we want to mention also, sometimes have a brief telemetry loss due to the launcher's position. This is also quite normal. We don't lose the information, it's stored on board. The vehicle equipment bay, that's the white band there, inside that is something called the central telemetry unit, and inside that is something called mass memory. The exact times and durations of the signal loss are programmed into the unit, and the unit's programmed to record the data it would normally be sending to the stations on the ground. It's also programmed to start sending these data back when the signal has mentioned. I mentioned this when the signal has returned. I mentioned this one blackout of 36 seconds between the Natal station earlier and the Ascension Island station, then another of 14 seconds between Ascension Island and the Libreville, Gabon station. Again, all quite normal and all under control. About 8 minutes to go before separation of our final passenger, Intelsat 34. Here's an interesting note you might not know. All the systems we've been talking about on the launcher, the energy systems, the propellant, the batteries, everything, they all have a sell-by date. If they're not used by these limits, they get thrown away. There's a similar system on airplanes. There's a similar system in your car, and of course, there's the same thing on the yogurt in your refrigerator. It covers everything on Ariane, from the turbo pumps down to the screws. In the vehicle equipment bay, for example, it applies to some of the clamp bands that we talked about that hold the satellites in place inside the fairing, because they work with a system of spring compression, and the tension in the springs could go lax with time. The use-by date, of course, depending on their date of manufacture, and their manufacturer guarantees them for a certain time. The upper stage engine has a use-by date of October 15th this year. And the upper stage, the entire upper stage, has a use-by date of April 28th of next year. We're still in the ballistics phase. This is the final part of the first half of it. The first half will end with separation of our second passenger, Intelsat 34, due in about 6 minutes. Eutelsat 8 West B was in the upper berth, and it was separated first. This usually is the case. The upper satellite is usually the heavier one and is separated first. Total payload mass tonight, just under 10 tons, just a hair under 10 tons. Here in Jupiter are the operational teams, but in fact, to launch Ariane or Soyuz or Vega, we also need to have security people and support from the Army. You may have seen some of these people on the road. Firefighters, journalists, many other professions. The Jupiter Mission Control is like the space base's control tower. It's like an airport in 2 parts, invited guests and the VIPs on one side. The room seats about 250, and the operational people in the other. We promised you a look at another center of action. This is the CVI, the Immediate Visual Control Center. This is a facility south of the space base, high on a hill with excellent visibility. The CVI has all the means for receiving, processing, and storing the data that's being transmitted by Ariane to the ground. And right now, these people are following and analyzing the key flight data. They report Ariane 5's flight status to the team back here in Jupiter. And the displays up there, it's at a place called Galileo, they allow us to check the main parameters concerning propulsion, piloting, and trajectory. It also is good for the customers. We can give them a first round of information. It's called an orbital diagnosis when separation occurs, and a complete post-launch analysis performed here about a week after every launch. 4 minutes to go until separation. Some of the people here in Jupiter, the operational teams, arriving very early, many hours before liftoff. First operations usually began somewhere around 4 and 4.5 hours before launch tonight. We had rain today. You saw it didn't affect the launch too much. We had a little hold. But here at the CSG, we're on the edge of the Amazon rainforest near the equator. Rain and clouds usually not a problem. What we do have to monitor closely are wind conditions on the ground and also wind conditions at high altitude, especially the beginning of the year. It's not a problem at this point of the year. Rain not a problem. Lightning sometimes can be a problem. We like to avoid any risk from lightning. That could harm the launcher. We are approaching separation of our second passenger, Intelsat 34. You might have been hearing in the news about Ariane 6, the evolution of the launcher. There is a Target 2020 program that's been put in place. A contract was signed last week, August 12th, by European Space Agency and Airbus Safran launchers for the launcher system. Another one was signed by ESA and CNES, the French Space Agency, for the base. Europe's developing the successor to Ariane 5. More market-driven, more streamlined governance to meet customer needs. Two versions of the Ariane 6 are in the works. One they call the Ariane 6-2, the institutional version that will carry 5 tons to geostationary transfer orbit. And there's a second version called Ariane 6-4, used more for commercial launches, 10 tons to GTO like tonight. First launch in the new base will be ready in 2020. At the same time, a new version of the light Vega launcher, called the Vega C, is being readied for her maiden flight in 2018. So Arianespace, with already 512 satellites delivered since 1980, looking forward to even more successful years ahead. And we are looking forward to confirmation of separation of our second passenger, Intelsat 34. Intelsat was created in 1964, and if I'm not mistaken, created on August 20th, which is today. So happy birthday, if I'm right. That's the same year as the CSG. The French Guiana site was also chosen in 1964. Many reasons. They found a lot of advantages here. A large opening on the ocean, as we mentioned, to make possible flying both north and east, because we fly north for polar orbits, also over an area that offers low risk to nearby population. A low population density, they also found here. Some 200,000 people live in French Guiana. Most of the nation is forest, as you have seen if you've been down here. They also found a nearness to the equator, which allows a launch to benefit from the Earth's rotation, which gets more quickly into orbit. The Earth turns more quickly at the equator than at the poles. This is called the sling effect. They also found that there are no hurricanes or earthquakes here, as can strike in other parts of the world. The CSG is the world's only dedicated commercial space base, Arianespace operating and marketing the launcher family of Ariane 5, Soyuz, and Vega. As we come up to separation of Intelsat 34 at 41 minutes and 51 seconds, just a minute to go, one of these moments of high concentration for everyone here tonight, for Intelsat and for the Eutelsat people as well, of course, representing months, sometimes years of work for some of the people here and around the world. So the mood here in Jupiter, I would say, very focused. Although most of the people, I dare say, have gone through this before, it's still a very concentrated moment. You don't want to say tense, you might want to say intense. 20 seconds before separation of our second passenger, and you'll see she'll be pushed away from the mothership like Eutelsat was. And you'll hear the DDO calling out that confirmation. You can see our altitude. We're approaching the 45 kilometers. And our speed, you see, has dropped to 7 meters. Waiting for confirmation.
Séparation de la charge utile Intelsat 34.
And there you have it, the final good news. Ariane 5 has successfully separated her second passenger, Intelsat 34, and right on time. So from those intense moments just minutes ago, you can see the change here in Jupiter. You heard the applause, the hugs, the cigars will be forthcoming. Very buoyant all across the Space Center and at all the points and posts where people are following the launcher and the satellite. Work is just beginning. Some are dancing at, or soon will be, at the different ground stations at Intelsat 34 and other sites around the world. Her first maneuvers, first acquisition should come 5 minutes after separation. The Intelsat and the SSL people very happy. Within 2 hours, we'll begin the solar array deployment. The arrays will be fully deployed tomorrow, and when fully deployed, they measure 25 meters across. 4 apogee motor firings from tomorrow through to 4 days from now. Orbit raising will take 6 days. Start of in-orbit testing in 10 days and in-service beginning of October. While we're waiting for the speeches, did you get the answer to the quiz question? Our 2 passengers have never flown on an Ariane mission before, but the builders have. When was the last time Thales, Arianespace, and SSL flew together on an Ariane mission? I said it wasn't that long ago. In fact, it was the last launch. Flight 224, July 15th. An Ariane 5 orbited Star 1C4 built by Space Systems Loral, and MSG4 for EUMETSAT built by Thales Arianespace. Before that was also this year, Flight 222, April, Norway's Thor 7 SSL, and the French-Italian defense satellite Seacral 2, Thales Arianespace. So give yourself a round of applause if you got the answers right, and you get to watch a launch replay, which will be coming up in a moment. We're waiting for the traditional post-launch speeches. We'll be hearing from Stéphane Israël, Chairman, CEO of Arianespace, then from Michel Azibert of Eutelsat, from Riyad Kamoun of Thales Arianespace, from Harry Weller of SSL, Joel Barr of CNES, and the French Economic Minister Emmanuel Macron. I think our replay is ready. Meanwhile, the podium and its microphones being set up for the speakers now. Those of them working in the fishbowl will be shortly making their ways out to join us here in Jupiter, Mr. Israel and others. No doubt extending, receiving congratulations, shaking hands all around. Here's your replay. Stéphane Israël.
Messieurs les ministres, Monsieur le Préfet, Mesdames et Messieurs les élus de Guyane, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests,
members from French Guiana.
Arianespace is delighted to announce that Eutelsat 8 West B and Intelsat 34 were separated as planned on the targeted optimized geostationary orbit. Arianespace is to celebrate tonight Ariane 5's 67th success in a row with the first 2 commercial customers of our heavy lift vehicle, Eutelsat and Intelsat. I now switch to French. You will see the difference, maybe not. Donc en position haute, Eutelsat 8 West B.
Eutelsat 8 West B is the 30th satellite to be launched by Arianespace for Eutelsat. It comes in the context of over 30 years cooperation between the 2 companies. We have been friends and partners of Eutelsat for over 30 years, and we intend to remain so. We have another 3 satellites to be launched for Eutelsat in the next 2 years, including the first electric ones been entrusted to Ariane 5, and we're very happy with this. So thanks once again to Eutelsat for having placed their trust in us once again. Thank you to the President Michel de Rosen and Michel Azibert, who's with us here in Kourou. Congratulations also to Thales Arianespace. And today, for the 47th time, we've launched a space bus platform that's out of a total of 143 satellites for many different missions.
Is the 55th satellite launched by Arianespace for Intelsat. Our cooperation with Intelsat started more than 30 years ago, as for Eutelsat, with the launch of Intelsat 5F7 in October 1983 on Ariane 1. It will continue at the same pace with 4 more satellites in our order book, and Arianespace is especially proud to start deploying your next generation EPIC satellite next year. We know how it matters for you. So let me express my gratitude to Intelsat for its trust and fidelity, and particularly to its Chief Technical Officer, Thierry Guillemin, who is with us tonight. And I also want to say how happy we are to deliver successfully for Intelsat under the leadership of Steve Spengler. It is the first mission we do under his leadership tonight. Congratulations as well to Space Systems Loral, manufacturer of Intelsat 34. Among the 51 SSL built satellites launched by Arianespace so far, Intelsat 34 is the 45th based on the 1,300 bus, and 10 more are lined up in our backlog. So it shows how we are also partners. I would like also to take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Zhao, Secretary General of the International Telecommunications Union, who attended the launch with us in Jupiter. Considering the paramount importance of ITU's decision for our industry, it is a true honor to have you with us tonight. Pour ce nouveau succès d'Ariane 5 et d'Arianespace, je voudrais rendre hommage à l'ensemble.
As regards this further success for Ariane 5 and Arianespace, I'd like to pay tribute to all of those involved in Ariane, be they in Europe or in French Guiana. They are our partners joining us in this tremendous adventure of European launches. So many thanks to the European Space Agency and its space members for their support. Thank you to the launcher directorates from ESA and the CNES for their rigorous work in qualification and compliance. Thank you to European industry for having, under the leadership of Airbus Safran launchers, provide us with such a reliable launcher. It was the 50th success in a row of the ECA version. Today we have Ariane 5. In the future we'll have Ariane 6. There'll be a new form of governance, and Arianespace will work hand in hand with its prime shareholder, ASL. And I'm delighted to see this evening Alain Charmeau, who's the Executive President of ASL. Thank you also to CNES CSG and the ground industries, to whom we have to thank for the unparalleled availability of the facilities here at the CSG. So thank you also to the teams working at Arianespace for their commitment. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible. And we know that this is where success starts. It's thanks to the commitment of our staff that it's been possible to beat the record we set last year. Last year we had 11 launches, and this year we are well on the road to having 12. Before handing over to our customers, to our partners, I'd like to say to the Minister for the Economy, Industry and the Digital Sector how much we appreciate the fact that he's with us this evening here at the CSG. Through you, Minister, Arianespace would like to thank the French government as a whole for its constant support. It's never failed. It's unflagging in its support to Ariane and Arianespace. You in person have shown this support. You have made a commitment to the electrical satellite plan in the context of the 9 solutions for new industrial France. In the context of preparations for the ministerial in Luxembourg, this support was constantly shown by the French government, which committed to an adapted Ariane 6, adapted to the industrial capability of Europe and also to the expectations of institutional and commercial customers. A few days ago, a contract was signed for the development of Ariane 6, and this goes to show how far we've come in the past few months. There's also a decision that's been taken to modify the governance of the Ariane sector. Minister Emmanuel, in this new context, let me say that you can count on Arianespace in order to continue further successes. Our watchwords are reliability, availability, competitiveness. We will constantly serve our customers because our only objective is to make a success of the missions that are entrusted to us. We want to serve all of our shareholders and all of the European institutions because Arianespace is, after all, a European project. We will continue to work independently with all satellite manufacturers because we need their entire trust. And we will be working here very closely with all of our partners here at the launch base, the launch range. We are ready for what is ahead of us, and we intend to remain the global leader as regards commercial space transport. So many thanks once again for the success of the evening, and I'd now like to hand over to our customers and partners and to the Minister. Many thanks.
Monsieur le Ministre, Monsieur le Préfet, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Minister, Mr. Prefect, dear Lun Jiao, who is the Secretary General of ITU, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and particularly a great joy for me to take the floor here today in these circumstances. Of course, first of all, it's a huge relief. Of course, we know Arianespace has a reputation for being extremely reliable, but it's always a tense moment for us and for all the others who are participating in this evening's launch. So a great deal of emotion and satisfaction, however, for all of us. And this is not a satisfaction that is born by chance. It's due to the fact that we are working with extremely efficient, rigorous teams. First and foremost, I would like to thank them. First of all, of course, Arianespace that has given us a successful launch, almost always the case. Well done, all of you. Well done to all the teams who have worked. I'd just like to mention a few names, Jean-Marc Durand and Patrick Tusset particularly, but there are many others who were part of these teams. I'd also like to thank Thales Arianespace for their wonderful work of providing us and supplying us the satellite on time. Stéphane Magna, Stonazio, and all the others have worked unstintingly and continuously to provide this. I'd like to thank the Eutelsat teams. Our technical teams were wonderful. Christophe Duchesne was on the job for 3 years with passion and support. Peter Newell as well. I'd also like to thank Rafi Moussaillon. You've seen him mentioned many times today. He really is a well-known gentleman in the space world. I'd also like to thank other members of his team. Let me say a few words to say that today what we are celebrating is the success of European industry. It's Arianespace, of course, with Thales Arianespace and Eutelsat, each in its own domain is a leader, is a shining example of excellence. And as you have said, Stéphane, we have many projects jointly in the future. Some of them, of course, are very important for us. For example, we have a big high-speed internet project for Latin America, and also another one for the Pacific area. We also have flexible programs which are very new and different. We will be increasing the wideband and broadband and making it extremely fast. And these are new projects that are very exciting for all of us. And all of us will be involved in them. Let me also briefly talk about our satellite, Eutelsat 8 West B. And I would just like to say a few words in English so that those who are in Jupiter and Tucson can also follow what I'm saying.
Very big satellite. It's a satellite which is next to 6 tons. It carries both Ku-band television services and C-band telecommunication services. The Ku-band services are for the Middle East and North African region, very well represented today by our partners and customers. Our partner Nilesat, Hamdi Amer, thank you very much for being with us today. They've been our partners for 10 years. We work in a joint satellite. We've been doing so many things together in Egypt and around Egypt. So that's great. I would like also to congratulate and thank for being with us our other clients, Noorsat. Omar Chotel, CEO, is in Toucan. also Gulfsat. We have also Mohamed Al-Laj, CEO of Gulfsat, with us. We have our clients from Algeria Telecom. We have also Mr. Belghit, CEO. We have also our clients from Morocco, SNRT, from Mauritania. So both Maghreb, Egypt, and Middle East are concerned. We're talking about an orbital slot, which is the leading one in the Middle East, about 1,000 television channels. It's about 1/5 of the television channels we're carrying. And most importantly, an audience of 52 million homes, 250 million people watching television thanks to Eutelsat and Intelsat at 7-8 degrees west. And this is not just, old television, it's new television, more and more channel, more and more quality channel, high definition, soon ultra-high definition, interactive television, which is promoted by our innovation team with Jacques Dutron, who is with us today. We have so many things to deliver, IPTV on multi-screen. In the future, we would deliver video on demand with satellite. And this is something that we do in Europe, but also we do in all markets, in particular in the Middle Eastern market. We have also C-band. The telecommunication payload is a C-band payload. You insisted, Stéphane, on the importance of ITU. We know that we have a big fight to have together the satellite industry to make it such that C-band is preserved for all the needs. C-band serves internet for government, internet for schools, for hospitals. It is television. In Intelsat satellite today, you have a big payload for television C-band. So we need to defend C-band. It's very important for everybody in the future. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for the fantastic performance of Arianespace in this launch. And we look forward to work together again. Now, just in a few words, what is going to happen for our satellite? It is now monitored by our team in Rambouillet, which is in fact a joint team of Eutelsat and Thales Alenia Space. They've taken control. Lindsay Pattinson and Marc Belenguet are taking care of that with the Thales team. We will have a number of difficult steps to go through. It's not finished for us. The adventure will last a few weeks. We will have in particular to deploy the solar panels, first partly this night in a few hours, and then completely later on. We would have to change the orbit of the satellite to reach the circular geostationary orbit by different maneuvers at apogee. And we will have finally to do all the testing. The satellite will start operationally in the beginning of October to provide the service, the television service and the telecommunication services, which are mostly for Africa and South America. And at that point in time, we would have a big party in Dubai with our Middle Eastern customers to celebrate that. In the meantime, we wish good luck to our satellite. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And I was so happy that you are here today to be with us and participate in this joyful event. And merci beaucoup encore à la fois à Arianespace, au CNES. Joël, nous étions sur les bancs d'école il y a très longtemps ensemble.
Joël and I shared her school, her desks years ago, and it's very good to see you here again this evening.
Monsieur le ministre, monsieur le préfet, mesdames et messieurs les
Minister, Prefect, elected members,
généraux, chers amis,
CEOs,
quel lancement fantastique, mais aussi
what an amazing launch, but what stress as well. I was really very emotional. I'd like to congratulate all of the teams from Eutelsat, Arianespace, CNES, ESA for having carried out the successful launch. Thanks to your expertise and thanks to the usual cooperation, everything went ahead nominally, but it's always much easier to say afterwards, isn't it, when the launch has been a success. Thank you also to the people from Thales Alenia Space for having shown such commitment in the interests and in the service of our customers. Today's a key date, it's a crucial date for Eutelsat 8WB, and everyone at Thales Alenia Space is proud to have made a contribution. Team spirit and mutual trust, they're the watchwords that characterize the relations we have with our partner, Eutelsat. The result of this is what we've seen today, and we continue We expect to continue, and we want to continue this in the long run. The development program, the satellite, 8WB, has proved to be a success. And thanks to the excellent work of some 150 people over 30 months at the different industrial sites in Cannes, Toulouse, have contributed to this. It's also thanks to the ecosystem that's been created around some 20 SMEs in France. They're high-tech companies in different parts of France, different regions. It's also thanks to the commitments on the part of the agencies, CNES and the European Agency, that made it possible to develop and qualify new technologies that's fully flexible and that we now see on board this satellite. In other words, receivers, amplifiers, and converters. I'm sure you've all understood, and particularly you, Minister, that in the highly competitive world of satellites, excellence is something that we are proud of. It's the fruit of hard work that's continued to be made in the context also of the French policy. And I'd like to thank you and the government for the constant support. It is crucial indeed for our companies that massive investments be made in R&D in order to be able to remain at the forefront of these developments. Satellites and launchers, they're a strategic tool for the state, making it possible to cope with sensitive issues such as defense and security, but they're also important as an economic lever. As regards tonight's launch, and as Michel has just said, just after separation, the Eutelsat teams have taken over control of the satellite, but I can tell you now that we've received the first signs of life from our baby, and I hope our baby will live a long time. So once again, many thanks to the teams from Arianespace, from Eutelsat, and thanks also to our industrial partners who've worked so hard for this mission. Let me conclude in English.
8WB is important for Eutelsat, as Michel said. It's providing extra coverage to supply the fast-growing digital TV markets. Eutelsat 8WB is also a challenging program for Thales Arianespace. It's one of the biggest spacecraft Thales Arianespace have ever built, equipped with the most flexible and powerful payload. Many thanks to Eutelsat for their confidence in the Thales Arianespace teams. We are honored and proud to be part of this fantastic program. Merci à tous.
Good evening. Bill Weller and I know we have to be brief because we stand between you and the words of a minister and a party. So I'll try to be quick. Monsieur le Ministre, dear friends, it's a great day, of course, beautiful launch. You may have been in this business for 30 years. It still gives you a thrill to watch a launch, and of course even more when it's your satellite that's being launched. I want to thank Stéphane. I want to thank the teams at Arianespace and CNES for another successful mission. As you said, it's number 55 now. It's been a great collaboration. And frankly, what we ask for is very simple. We want to be launched successfully and on time. That's what you do very well. That's why you are coming back. I want to thank SSL for building another beautiful satellite. John Shelley is not with us today, but John, I know you are watching. So thank you for building our 50th spacecraft. We continue to write a page of the space history together. And 50 is, by the way, a very fitting number. 50 years ago is when the first Intelsat spacecraft was launched. It was called Early Bird. And this satellite, 4 years later, broadcast the first steps of Neil Armstrong on the moon. So it's an important milestone for us as well. I would like to thank our teams in Palo Alto who are always demanding the best from our manufacturer. And most importantly, I want to thank our customers. We have some of them here with us today. This is for you. You are making this possible. And with your help, in a few weeks, Intelsat 34 will start distributing video and media content to millions over Latin America. as well as internet access and TV programs over the Atlantic for those who are lucky enough to travel often between, for instance, the US and Europe. I want to mention that for our teams back at home, our operations team, hard work begins. I got confirmation as well that we have the spacecraft telemetry. Our team in Washington will now raise the orbit of the craft during a few days to geostationary altitude, then test the satellite, and by 1st October we should be ready to start commercial service. So thank you, Jean-Luc, thank you, Joe, thank you, Louis, Dennis, back home, Knut, also, you guys are the best, and I know you have our back. I want to say finally that I'm looking forward to come back here in a few months. We selected, of course, Arianespace to launch our most precious assets, the next generation of our satellite. Each of these epic satellites will have roughly 10 times the capacity of our biggest satellites today. This is also a digital payload that will give us the flexibility to do many new things for our customers, and it will be a joy to be back here and probably watch another beautiful launch. So thank you very much, and I think I leave the floor to Bill.
Congratulations to everyone that worked so hard to make this mission a success so far. Thank you particularly to Thierry and to Ken and all of Intelsat for showing your loyalty and confidence in SSL to allow us the opportunity to build you this satellite. I'd also like to thank Stéphane and the entire Arianespace team. The precision and efficiency in which you work is an inspiration to our field. Finally, I'd like to thank Michelle and the entire Eutelsat team for being a good fairing partner and a good upstairs neighbor. This launch, as has been mentioned, carries several significances to SSL, as Intelsat 34 is our 50th satellite being built and delivered for Intelsat, as well as our 51st launch with Arianespace. And another satellite is scheduled to be here for the next launch out of Kourou next month. Some of our launch-based teams have actually stayed since the prior launch and are staying through the next one, which will be our 4th Arianespace launch of the year. It's both exciting and satisfying to celebrate another successful launch here in Kourou alongside Intelsat and the Arianespace teams, our long-term friends. Our 3 teams have worked together since the launch of the Intelsat 507 satellite in 1983. Space is hard. It takes an incredible amount of skill, dedication, and people hours to accomplish each and every mission successfully. But I think we can all agree that the satisfaction of success makes it worthwhile. Thank you very much for your support and your trust, and let's get to the party.
Bien, Monsieur le Ministre, Mesdames et Messieurs, je vais évidemment...
Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I will keep it as short as possible because obviously we want to hear from the Minister. Let me first of all begin by congratulating everyone for this further success. It's the 50th success for Ariane 5 ECA. Stéphane's already said that, and that's really quite extraordinary for those of us who are familiar with the full history of the launch vehicle, including the difficult beginnings that we remember. So thank you and congratulations to the teams from Arianespace, CNES, industry, ASL and all the partners. Thanks also to ESA as well. Thank you to the customers. Thank you to the satellite companies for having placed your trust in us. Thank you to French Guiana. Thank you to the elected members and the state representatives, the prefect. Thank you for being with us. and thank you to the local population. We've been here with you for over 50 years now. We're now 50 years old at the CSG, and you're with us to share the success once again. We're delighted and very proud. This being said, perhaps I could repeat what's already been said by Stéphane earlier on. Today's success is just a step on the way. We welcome this, and it comes just a week after the signing of the Ariane 6 development contracts. And I'd like to congratulate and thank Gaël Winters and his team with us today from ESA for having made it possible to do so with Airbus, with CNES. Minister, Ariane 6 saw the light of day a year ago. ESA, CNES, Airbus Safran launchers decided in the time what would happen as regards Ariane 6, what shape it would take, or when it would come about. And this all dates back to the ministerial of the agency in December 2014. And here we are in August 2015. So we have hit our targets as regards the timeline. Ariane 6 is something we need if we're to be competitive and to continue to provide a guaranteed access to space for Europe in an increasingly competitive world, more and more cutthroat competition. So this is something that we'll be doing together as a team, and that is what we have already started to do. It doesn't mean that we're going to give up on Ariane 5, not at all, nor Soyuz and Vega. They're both operational. We mustn't drop our guard. Stéphane is constantly reminding us that we have to continue to improve the performance and competitiveness of Ariane 5 ECA, and we've been doing so today, indeed. We have to continue to operate Soyuz from French Guiana. I mean, obviously, that is an essential complement to Ariane 5 today, and we can see what we've been done since 2011. And then, of course, we've got the smaller launcher of Vega for future commercial launches. So we have all three of them operated here at the CSG. It's the Spaceport for Europe. Minister, you can count on the CNES to continue to contribute to further successes. And I appreciate the fact you're here, and it's an honor for me to give you the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians, Mr. Prefect, President of the Regional Council. I think everything has been said by those who spoke before me, but I am really delighted to be here. I'm very happy to be here. As Stéphane Israël said, 67th success in a row. You have beaten a record today, but I hope you will continue to beat records in the future. But I wanted to be here for at least three reasons. First of all, because after all, what we are experiencing here is an adventure which represents idealism. But it's also an international, global adventure, but it's also something which reaches out first and foremost to French Guiana. As I said, this is an endeavor which is full of idealism. Building satellites, sending them out into the sky, I think people would probably have thought we were completely mad. And in fact, when General de Gaulle spoke about this, many people must have thought that it was completely unrealistic. And in fact, I remembered just when I was walking through the room which is ahead of us, I think the words of Chesterton came to me, and he wrote a poem which was a list of what Robinson Crusoe took with him to his island. There were 2 hams and 3 cheeses, 3 pieces of cheese, because a poet is an idealist. And an idealist is always someone who is down to earth. And this is because it is these minor things that attach us to our earth. And so I think being an idealist means that you're also prosaic and very down to earth. And this is what I have noticed since I've been here. I have seen that each minor detail is followed carefully. Every little step is in fact implemented in her minute detail. And this is what makes you idealists. I would really like to congratulate ESA, CNES, Arianespace, Eutelsat, it is present here today, and TAS, SSL, all of you are here and represent that dedication to detail. And in fact, Jupiter today is an indication of these minute details overlapping into a well-knitted cloth of success. Every day, teams, in fact, are working on these details for these dreams to become realities. And this is why I can say that the work has to be tightly knitted, close together. And there's got to be something which is well knit, close together, but the governance also has to be something which takes into consideration all these different elements. And this is what the French President of the Republic, in fact, has really wished to implement as well. I'd also like to thank Thierry Mondon and others who have continued to work at this, who have decided to simplify French governance, make it a little simplified, streamlined, and Ariane 6 will in fact allow us to open a new page and allow us to continue with this exciting agenda and exciting adventure. But this, as I said, is also a European and a world adventure, global adventure. It is in this way that we are going to improve humankind and services that are available to all. We will be working on science, telecommunications, Earth observation. We will therefore be improving our forms of communication, our ways of connecting with each other. We'll be using fibers, other ways in which to observe the Earth. And as you have all said, our world today is international. We have Soyuz and Vega here by our side, and we can see, therefore, here in French Guiana, we have, therefore, a truly international nature. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for being here by our side. But as we all know, competition is rife. New projects, new companies such as SpaceX, I think is proof of this. Therefore, we have to continue to be idealists, but we have to keep this in mind if we wish to succeed further. Now, we succeeded the space sector in Europe some years ago when the European Space Agency was set up. And in fact, the fact that we managed with the European Space Agency and with the CNES to undertake these very ambitious projects, it's because we took on board the fact that international competition was around us and had to be harnessed and tackled. And I would like to say that all of us together have to face these new challenges. The fact that costs are being cut, SpaceX, as you know, in fact, generated certain events around us, and all of us have to be ready to respond. We have to be more competitive from Arianespace, the CNES has to be more committed, and all of us are working hand in hand for Ariane 6. And I think the last ministerial meeting, I think, stressed this quite clearly. A few hours ago, I saw how this is actually being expressed here because the construction sites for Ariane 6 are already around us. Ariane 6, therefore, in 2020 will allow us, therefore, to move on to greater successes. And I've understood I'm going to continue to keep that pressure alive. So this is something which means that this adventure that we are sharing together will continue to exist in our sector, in our industries. It is an international challenge. It is global. And I think all of us have to work together to be able to achieve these goals. So the new structure which is taking place around ASL, the role of CNES and ESA will allow us to achieve this form of competition. And finally, as I said, this adventure is also an adventure which concerns French Guiana. General de Gaulle in 1964 decided that he was going to undertake a major endeavor in French Guiana so that the rest of the world could look to French Guiana and see it and know it as it truly is. And that is something that we have seen evolve as well over this period. I would like to thank the elected representatives here of French Guiana, because you can see that these adventures that I've talked about have taken root in French Guiana and are successful. And I think figures speak for themselves. 15% of the jobs French Guiana are actually from the space sector. And in fact, we would, of course, like to step that up. That would be excellent. But if we wish that all the different industrial sectors be also successful as the space sector, and we hope that this will be the case, and we are taking steps along those lines. More and more of the French Guyanese population work in the space sector. And I'd like to thank the CSG, the CNES, and all the others who are present here for this. This was not the case some 15 years ago. Stéphane Israël mentioned this to me a few days ago. But you have done your utmost for, out of the 1,500 jobs that are available through the space sector, that 2/3 of them be held by the French Guyanese. These are jobs that are real jobs here. They are, of course, skilled jobs. And this is extremely important for all of us. Now, of course, we could go much further. And I think that is the mission, that is the role that we should have. We should go further by strengthening the links between, for example, universities, research centers, and the CSG. We can even go further than that. And in fact, give training courses so that people in the area are proud to participate in this adventure and be part of the Guyanese space sector. It is already very successful, but if we go further, as I have said, then I think the industrial success will, in fact, trickle down to other successes in French Guiana. So, as I said, the adventure here is global, is international, it's French, and it's Guyanese. And all of you are part of that. And the French government will always be there to support you. Now, for some time now, people have often said, what will happen? I was wondering to myself if this evening, if the launch had not succeeded, what was I going to say? Some people had prepared a backup speech. I think you've got to be extremely optimistic, and I had only one speech prepared in my mind. But I think if it had not been a success, I would have perhaps thought of Simon Nais when he spoke of Don Quixote. And he said Don Quixote was, of course, chasing windmills. And, of course, this was a disaster because he could never achieve them. And those who actually succeed are those who have understood reality and who adapt to reality. Those who fail are those who have a dream, who wish to change the world without adapting to it. So today, if you wish to change the world, and you have managed to do so. If you wish to change the world, you have to adapt and innovate. We will always be by your side. Thank you.
Bon, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, just to conclude, just to thank all of you one more time. And to tell that we have 2 next launches to deliver in September, which shows how European and international is what we do here with Arianespace from CSG. We will launch for Europe with Soyuz for Galileo on September the 10th, and it will be the 3rd launch for Galileo this last month. And we will have a launch for Argentina and Australia at the end of September. So September, two launches, one with Soyuz, one with Ariane, one for the European Union and ESA, one for Argentina and Australia. Je crois que cela montre à quel point, effectivement, ce qui se joue ici nous dépasse très largement. Merci beaucoup.
What we're doing here goes far beyond the limits of Europe.
Well, we will say goodbye over a final launch replay coming up of Arianespace flight number 225. Goodbye from French Guiana, where Ariane 5 has once again delivered two new satellites beginning life, Eutelsat 8 West B and Intelsat 34, the 513th and 514th satellites launched by Arianespace since its career began in 1980. Congratulations to everybody. That makes 67 straight successful launches for Ariane 5. She has launched nearly 60% of the global market today, and she keeps on rolling. Next launch, as Stéphane Israël said, September 10th with the Soyuz. We'll be here. We hope you will be too. Until then, Joshua Jample, on behalf of everyone here at the Space Base, saying thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to being with you next time. Goodbye, everybody.